Hi, I'm Supervisor George Hoehmann, and welcome to another edition of Hometown Happenings. Before we get to our guest on this show, I'd like to update you on a few initiatives that we're working on here in the town of Clarkstown. In June, we passed our no-knock registry and no-knock law, and we've had over 2,000 residents sign up to be on the registry. This important legislation has been passed to enable you as a homeowner to prevent unwanted solicitations. And we can see by the outpouring of people signing up that it was much needed, and people are delighted with the new registry. Our code enforcement initiative is in full force and underway. I'm delighted that we brought on 3 new code enforcement officers and a deputy town attorney who's a prosecutor to be able to assist us in ensuring that people's properties are protected by maintaining our codes vigorously. We're moving forward on that initiative, and I encourage folks that have any concerns about neglected or abandoned properties or illegally converted properties to contact my office or the town attorney's office at 639-2050, my office, or the town attorney's office at 639-2060. Summer's well underway. We're in the midst of our concerts in the park at Hoehmann's virtually every Wednesday throughout the summer. And Clarkstown is just a wonderful place to spend some time. Go over to Congress Lake or our pools or attend our concerts. Coming up on this edition of Hometown Happenings, I have 3 wonderful guests: David Kirschtel, CEO of JCC Rockland; Lis Gessel, an Iraqi war vet who recently received the Rockland County Freedom Award; and our final guest on this show is New York State Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for our guests. And welcome back. My first guest on today's show is David Kirschtel, CEO of JCC of Rockland. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Supervisor Hoehmann. Happy to be here.
You know, David, I've known you for a number of years, and you've done some wonderful work over at JCC Rockland. And, you know, I'd like to talk a bit about the wonderful programs that you have over there. But before we get to that, you know, maybe we could talk a little bit about yourself, and you know, you're a Clarkstown resident, a little bit about what brought you to the JCC Rockland, and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I've been living now in Rockland County about 22 years in the same home in New City. And originally I'm from Newton, Massachusetts, and was living in the Boston area. And at the time, I was working for a publicly traded company, BFI, and they had transferred me down here. And that's how I got to Rockland. My wife was from Wayne, New Jersey, close by. And when I left BFI, I got involved in the JCC on its board of directors originally, and I was on the board for about 6 years. And I became so motivated and inspired by the organization that when the position of CEO opened up, I decided that it was something that I wanted to be considered for. And 16 years later, I'm still at the JCC, love what I'm doing, and feel really good about the service we provide to the community.
And you're, I would imagine you're still a Boston Red Sox fan, despite the transplant here, or?
I actually am a Red Sox, Patriot, and Celtic fan, and unfortunately, my sons are Giant and Jet fans, so there's a little bit of animosity within the family, but it's all in good friend.
Well, you know, I'm glad to see that your children have seen the light, and you know, maybe we'll get you to see the light someday as well.
Sounds good.
But you know, David, a little bit about the JCC Rockland. I'm fairly familiar with it. You have a gorgeous campus, you know, that is home to a number of other important organizations as well. But you know, the JCC is really you know, the lead, in control of that campus, and just wonderful building that's been put together, and some just fabulous programs. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the mission of the JCC, and then we can get a little bit into some of the programs and some of your partners over there.
Sure. So the JCC, we've been in the county approximately 30 years, but really where we had our tremendous growth was back in December of 2007, after roughly 3 years of work on the former Champion Paper Building, we were able to make that campus on West Nyack Road which is about 135,000 square feet, really a centerpiece for not only the Jewish community, but for the greater community. So at the JCC, we provide programming for infants through seniors. And some of our signature programs include, 2 years ago, we opened up a full-day early childhood program, which is open to children as young as 6 weeks old through pre-kindergarten. And thanks to the town working with us in regards to the zoning and getting the approvals for that new area of business that we started, we were able to open up 2 years ago with 0 children initially, and 2 years later we now have 75 children enrolled in that program.
Wow.
So that program has really been a home run for the entire community. Our seniors, we have more than 1,000 seniors who participate in the JCC, whether they're participating in lectures at the JCC or traveling, or they're working out in the Russin Wellness and Fitness Center. There are activities for everybody on a daily basis. So one of the beauties of the JCC is that you get to see the infants and the 1-year-olds and the 2-year-olds going around in carriages. You see the seniors there participating in programs. And in the summertime, we've been able to grow our summer camps at the JCC. So we have several weekly camps, camp called Discover All-Star Sports, which is done in partnership with Al Conti from RBI. And since 2012, we've been able to grow our camps from 45 children a day on the campus to almost 250 kids a day on campus today. So we're really, we're here to service the entire community. We welcome everybody, regardless of the fact that it's called a Jewish Community Center, and our mission is focused on the Jewish community. We welcome everybody, and I think everybody really feels at home there.
Right. Another thing that the JCC does, you'll frequently open your building up, your facility up for other events. You'll have guest speakers. In addition to that, I know in the past that your building has been host to community forums for important topics and even for political debates.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's great to see how the JCC's really kind of imbued itself within the community, and how you've taken a former paper plant essentially and really turned it into a dynamic community hub. For Rockland's community and frankly for Clarkstown.
I'll tell you, George, although I've been there 16 years, I still feel like it's only been a year or 2 years. There's so much to be done, but every day you feel good when you walk through the building. And when you think about the fact that it was a former paper company, when you walk through the door, you really get the sense and the feeling of community. So it really is meaningful to us. And when you mentioned before, the fact is we're not the only ones in that building. So, there are other organizations that share the home. So we're home to the Jewish Federation of Rockland County, which is the umbrella agency for the Jewish community. Rockland Jewish Family Service, which provides counseling, has a kosher food pantry, is also located there. We have a day school, the Rockland Jewish Academy, which is also located on the campus. And the Epilepsy Society is located there as well. So it really is a place that really serves the entire community. And one of the things that I've kidded people when they drive by on the thruway and they see the parking lot and it's always full, I always kid them and say, yeah, we have a great deal with the local car dealership to park their cars, because it really is a thriving community center that really is a hub in the town of Clarkstown. And we're very grateful to the town for your support and the town board's support always being there for us, because we look at our relationship as a partnership.
Oh, absolutely. And I know that our police department and police administration have been over, to work closely on security. You have a very strong security program over there, as really is needed in today's day and age.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing really we've been able to discuss back and forth when we've had issues in the past. Sometimes, unfortunately, there are issues of anti-Semitism that rear its ugly head in Rockland County, and I know that you've taken a leadership role with that as well.
Yeah, and really, in regards to that, we're always looking to be supportive when anything happens against any people, but the Jewish Federation has really taken that leadership role on in the community. So, and again, we're very appreciative of the town's support when anything comes up.
So we have about a minute or so left, and I'd like to really just focus, if you will. I know a number of years ago, with the Olympics now coming up, the Munich massacre that had taken place with the Israeli athletes, back in the Munich Olympics in the 70s, 1972. And the JCC Rockland really took a leading role in trying to get a moment of silence at the Olympics. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that, particularly as the Olympics are coming up.
Sure. So back in 2012, when we hosted the JCC Maccabi Games in Rockland County, we dedicated the games to the memory of the Munich 11. And since you told me 1 minute, I'm going to be brief because I could talk about the situation a long time. But the reality is through an online petition that was put together by Mickey Leader, one of our volunteers, we were able to accumulate 110,000 signatures from 150 countries. We were able to get people like Senator Gillibrand and our Congress people to, in Congress and in the Senate, bring, to the, a resolution that was passed. And from the Rockland community getting involved with the families of the Munich 11, we actually got lots of governments ultimately to stand up to support a minute of silence. And although it didn't happen in 2012, we're very excited that in 2016 in Rio, that, in part because of our efforts, there will be a memorial for the first time that will be held in the Olympic Village for all of the athletes where the Munich 11 will be remembered. So although it won't be a minute of silence, it is a good first step with the new president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, and Anki Spitzer and Alana Romano, two of the widows who have led the crusade, along with the families, are very pleased, and that really has meant a lot to us being involved.
Well, that's really an incredible testament to your efforts, the efforts of the Jewish community here in Jewish Federation in bringing this issue forward, because it's very true. It really kind of almost originated in some ways here in JCC in Rockland, and for there actually to be some type of movement. It didn't happen really on the anniversary, the 40th anniversary in 2012, but it's good to see that there's some type of recognition after all of these years of the athletes now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, David, I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest. Perhaps if you could just give your contact information if folks want to get in touch with you, or how they might be able to find out more about the JCC.
Sure. So you can certainly check out our website at jccrockland.org. All the information is there. But I invite everybody to come on down. We're located right next to the Salvation Army at 450 West Nyack Road, and we would certainly love to welcome you to come take a tour and see what we have to offer the entire community. So thank you again for having me.
Great. And David, thank you again for being my guest, and keep up the good work as the CEO of JCC Rockland.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you. And welcome back. My next guest is Lis Gessel, an Iraqi war veteran and a member of a number of veterans organizations who's joining us today. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, George. Thank you.
Liz, first of all, I want to start off by thanking you for your service to our country. I know that you served several years over in Iraq as a military police officer. But before we get to your service and some of the veterans causes that you're involved with, including now the Joseph Dwyer program, I'd like to, maybe have you talk a little bit about your background and your time here in Rockland.
Great, great. I was born in Pennsylvania, but I only lived there for like 2 days. And otherwise, I was raised in Bardonia. Went through the Clarkstown School District, graduated from Clarkstown South, and shortly after I graduated was when I took the plunge and enlisted into the Army. But growing up here was, I couldn't ask for anything better, basically. And it turned, Rockland and Clarkstown specifically really molded me into the person that I am today.
Mm-hmm. And you currently are involved in a number of veterans organizations. We'll get to those later on, but maybe we could talk a little bit about your experience as an Iraqi war veteran and some of your assignments. What rank were you and what service?
The U.S. Army Reserves, and when I got out of the Army, I was at the rank of sergeant, which I had held for probably 3 years before my time was finished. I was in the 812th Military Police Company out of Orangeburg, New York, and after September 11th, and when we knew there was a conflict coming, that unit was split up into two pieces. Part of them deployed one place, and part of them deployed with the 310th Military Police Battalion out of Uniondale, New York, which is where I ended up. And so January of 2003, we mobilized down to Fort Dix, New Jersey, where we did basically preparation for war in the snow, for a war in the desert, which was amusing.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, it's
so
20 degrees and you're going over to Iraq where
right.
it's in excess of 100.
Right, low crawling in the snow when you're going to be, fighting in 140 degrees. It's awesome. So we spent 3 months at Fort Dix, and then we mobilized and we landed in Kuwait. We spent probably 5 days at a what we call tent city, which is just tents, and it's free for all. Like if you get a place to sleep, you get a place to sleep. Then we went to Camp Arifjan, Kuwait, which was run by the Air Force and the Marines, I believe. We spent about a month there doing force protection, which is basically gate security, checking people's vehicles to make sure there was no explosive devices, checking IDs, so on and so forth.
Well, let me just ask a question. Very interesting, I think, maybe perspective. What was it like being in Kuwait and Iraq as a female military personnel, given the cultural mores, if you will, of the Iraqi and Kuwaiti people?
That's interesting because I'm a female and because of the difference in gender roles, so to speak, overseas. I was not allowed to do certain things. The first prison that we worked at, which was an crimes, Iraqi on Iraqi crimes, so it was basically not against coalition forces, it was just Iraqi civilians against Iraqi civilians. I wasn't allowed to go into the jail because I'd be looked at differently than I should be, and I wouldn't be given the same respect as my male counterparts. So I spent a lot of time just working the radio, managing the evidence, and basically doing inventory. But at the second jail that we went to, which was a Crimes Against Coalition, an EPW, Enemy Prisoner of War camp, we actually had an incident once where there were some angry prisoners, and we were trying to break up the argument, let's say. And I went in, and the Iraqi men of the compound kept saying, they call you Mr. or Mrs. They Mr. He said, they would keep saying, Mrs., we don't want you to get hurt. And they kept pushing me out of the way, which I thought was really ironic.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that at the first prison. I got no respect there. But at the second place, I guess maybe I just earned it from working fairly with them. But it was it's definitely an interesting experience.
And you served there in 2003, 2004?
Yes. So we moved into Iraq in June of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
We were first in Diwania, where we worked, like I said, at a jail where Iraqis committed crimes against Iraqis, and we were training them to be corrections officers.
Mm-hmm.
We spent...
So you were training the Iraqi
police.
Police. So you were part of the group that helped to train the Iraqi police
Yes.
and corrections officers.
Yes. So we were teaching them how to make sure, maintain the health and welfare of the prisoners, how to do counts, how to handle an escape attempt, how to handle an outside force trying to come in and break the jail open so that this way everybody could escape. So there's just parts of the things, but the day-to-day operations and how to run a prison. So once that mission was completed, and it was determined that the corrections officers were ready to take the jail over on their own, we moved down south to Qasr, which is right on the border of Kuwait, and we were at an enemy prisoner of war camp, where all the prisoners there were crimes against coalition forces. So I was in charge of one compound that had 500 prisoners. All men, obviously. They don't keep women and men in the same camps. And everyday operation consisted of, getting them up, getting them in line so they could get something to eat, inspecting their quarters to make sure they didn't have any contraband or any weapons, doing head counts, so on and so forth.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so you've completed your tour of duty when?
I think we came home in February of 2004, but technically April of 2004.
Right, okay. And so you were there for some fairly significant, difficult times.
Yes.
in Iraq. Did you have any close calls?
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
We had actually two specific incidents. One was IEDs when we were in a convoy. They went... Fortunately, nobody was seriously injured, but it was nighttime. There's no street lights or anything there, and two IEDs went off right next to two of the Humvees in front of me, and I was in the back vehicle, so I was watching the whole thing, and it was intense, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And then we definitely received mortar attack. I don't want to say on a regular basis, but several times on our camp. And there was one attack where the mortar went off probably about 50 feet off outside of the window, right where I was sleeping. Mm. And that just rattles you to the core. Right. But yeah, just right. So close. But.
So really courage under fire, I would have had,
yeah.
50 feet away. Mm-hmm. We have just a couple of minutes left. Maybe we could talk a little bit, segue into some of the veterans causes that you're involved with. You're part of the VFW, American Legion, and the Joseph Dwyer program
yes.
now. So maybe you could speak a little bit about your involvement with veterans organizations. And you were recently awarded the Rockland County Freedom Award.
Yes.
So we want to congratulate you on that.
Thank
it was
you.
An award for the county executive, and I know we also recognized you
yes.
as well here in Town Hall at one of our town board meetings recently. But maybe talk a little about those veterans organizations.
Okay, sure. So the VFW stands for Veterans of Foreign Wars, which is specific to people that have served in a conflict in a theater, so to speak. I've been the commander of the VFW in Upper Nyack. It's number 9215 since 2011. Prior to that, I was the junior vice commander. Our post is physically small, mm-hmm. but we have a lot of young up-and-coming members, which I kind of pride myself and the specific post on, because we're really trying to engage the younger people. Because as the World War II, Korean, and Vietnam guys get older, move to Florida, retire, it's hard to engage them as much. And I want to try to prevent, as much as I can, veterans that are from my generation from disappearing into the population, which is what they have a tendency to do. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to engage as many young people as we can, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kosovo even, and Desert Storm, and we're trying to get them to join our ranks so that this way the VFW is something that's always there to help veterans, because that's what we do entirely. It's a 100% nonprofit organization.
And how would somebody watching this program find out more or get engaged in the VFW?
Okay. Well, there is numerous websites, VFW websites, VFW Department of New York specifically. And our post has a Facebook page. It's VFW Post 9215. You can follow us on Facebook, and we post updates. We're going to be having a ceremony soon. We had a Boy Scout come and do his Eagle Scout project as part of improving our grounds, and we're going to be having an event in August to present him with a placard, and we're going to have a barbecue, and basically everybody's invited. So that would be great, and that information will be posted on the Facebook page.
Right. We'll just finish up. You're also now starting to get involved with the Joseph P. Dwyer program.
Yes.
And maybe for the benefit of our viewers, you could mention just a little bit about that program.
Sure. So the Joseph P. Dwyer organization is a vet-to-vet, peer-to-peer type organization where veterans speak with, and I don't want to say counsel, but just be a friend to other veterans. And it works two ways. We have veterans that are in need of assistance, whether it be emotional assistance, they need a friend, or if they need help, navigating through the VA system, or the Department of Defense, trying to find a job, going back to school. And these are things that we want to help them with, because we want to better their situation. We want to help them better their situation. So it's a great program.
Right. Well, Liz, I want to thank you for, again, your service to our country, and I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest, on my program, Hometown Happenings. You had, maybe not the most glamorous, job and service in the military, but you served in a time of war, came under fire, and frankly, did, a task that needed to be done, and for that, we're very grateful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So my next guest coming up will be Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski. And again, Liz, thank you for
Thank you very much,
joining
George.
us. Thank you. My final guest is New York State Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski. Thank you for joining us, Ken.
Great to be here.
Ken, I've worked closely with you throughout the years, and I'm really delighted now working with you as supervisor on a number of initiatives within the town, and we can talk maybe about some of those later in the program. But perhaps for the benefit of our listeners, you could talk a little bit about yourself. They see your news alerts and they see you on TV, but they don't, maybe they don't really know an awful lot about you. So maybe you could give a little bit of an overview about your background and what really brought you into politics and how long you've been in the Assembly.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here, and it's been great to work with your administration on a host of things. As you know, I live here in Clarkstown, so not only do I represent it, but I live here. A little bit of my background. Well, I've born and raised right here in Clarkstown, Rockland County. In fact, I live about 30 yards or less from the house I grew up in. Little dirt road in New City off Collier Avenue, Fay Road, and my family grew up there. My father's grandparents built the house in the early 1950s, and when we grew up there, and 6 kids, so big family, sort of a large home there. and eventually bought a house up the street, and have been living there for a number of years. And I'm proud of my history and my roots here. On my mother's side, we actually go back almost 4 or 5 generations. The Magnetas, they lived in Rockland Lake before it became a state park. Worked for the Knickerbocker Ice Company. And my grandfather, who's a hero of mine, is still a World War II veteran, still a volunteer fireman here in the county. Well up, I don't even want to tell you his age because he does such a great job, he wouldn't want you to know. But, you know, we obviously have certain challenges here in Rockland County and Clarkstown, and we always will, and that's why you have government, and that's why you have citizen groups always trying to effectuate a better life for their families. But I'm proud of where I grew up. I'm not ready to say like, oh, I'm moving away. I mean, I think my roots are here. I've established my roots here, and I think we have a lot to be proud of. I mean, here in the town of Clarkstown, we have a great quality of life. We have great recreational facilities. We have great roads and schools and things like that, and we have a close proximity to the biggest city in the world, yet in a lot of places we have a rural atmosphere here in Rockland. And I think that's what a lot of our residents are hoping that we can preserve, is that we can have this balance between, you know, putting forth policies that can have some smart growth in terms of employment sectors and help with the burden of property taxes, but at the same time recognize that people moved out of the city in a lot of ways because they were looking for a quieter lifestyle, they were looking for the tree-lined blocks, they were looking for single-family homes and single-family lots. And I think a lot of the struggles we have is trying to have that balance. And so that's really what I've dedicated myself to.
You know, and for the benefit of our viewers as well, you're an attorney in addition to being in the Assembly, so as a lawmaker, you bring that experience with you. How long have you been in the Assembly?
I've been in the Assembly over 9 years now. It's hard to believe, time flies. I was elected May 1st of 2007. My professional background is as an attorney. I went to SUNY Albany undergraduate and studied political science and a philosophy minor, but I went to Seton Hall Law School, commuted here from Rockland, and got my degree and practiced law for a couple of years with my father, actually, in North New City. So I think you know, the law gives a good background. The great thing about legislatures is that people come from all different backgrounds. We have nurses, teachers, doctors, veterinarians, and of course lawyers. So I think the law gives me a good background in terms of being able to analyze various laws, various bills, and those type of things. And a broad section, just, you know, lawyers do a lot of different things. You know, I practice a little bit of estate law and that type of stuff, but you know, lawyers can practice employment law, environmental law. So, you know, it's a broad background.
You know, Ken, I've known you for a number of years, and in my background working as a not-for-profit executive before I came over to become supervisor, and you've really dove in on a lot of issues. Really, your policy work is very impressive as an assemblyman, and it's a credit to you and a credit to you know, to the Assembly, the work that you've been able to do to assist people with disabilities and really some of the other issues that you've kind of, you know, tackled. You know, we're really tackling a number of initiatives here in Clarkstown, and some of your work has really been very supportive of that. Certainly our code compliance initiatives and really trying to go after illegal housing and making sure that we're preserving the quality of life that you discussed here in our community in Clarkstown. And maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the initiatives towards the end of the session and some of the things that you really kind of tackled in this past session and have been ongoing works. I know that you've been doing an awful lot of work with heroin and opioid abuse. There's some work that's been done in this most recent session on ethics reform, which I think is really important, and potentially some amendments to the Constitution that would really change some things as it relates to ethics. And then, you know, perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the code initiatives, particularly with the fire safety, because that seems to be on top of mind for a lot of folks in our area.
I think one of the great things about being in a legislature is, you know, you represent a district, and I take that very seriously. So I try to maybe have a dichotomy, if you will, between really representing the local concerns, either from your administration, the town of Clarkstown as a municipality, and all the municipalities I represent, and also, you know, the people that I meet in the supermarket every day. And certainly one of those things, I think, is overdevelopment. I think you constantly have these challenges and struggles in a suburban community. and whether that's opposing things like the desalinization plant or right now the gasification plant up in Stony Point, or on a much more micro level, the conversions of single-family homes into inappropriate uses. And nothing gets the ire up more of suburban constituents than when they see their home values threatened and their quality of life threatened on a given block. So luckily, I live in Clarkstown, and you've done a great job, and we've a robust code enforcement agency here in Clarkstown. But in other parts of the county, it's not necessarily the case. And I've been working very closely with our fire department folks who have identified, we started meeting over 3 years ago now, identifying properties that have been either converted into illegal apartments or converted into illegal schools, and really put the lives of residents, students, and first responders at risk. So specifically, we've targeted those municipalities. I've gotten 2 orders from the Department of State identifying what we've described as the pervasive lack of code enforcement. In addition, all the private schools that are sort of operating without what they legally need to get, which are fire safety inspection reports, getting the State Education Department to crack down on the whole program, frankly. Because of our efforts, notices have been sent out statewide because I feel like there's just been a lack of compliance with what needs to happen. When you have single-family homes converted into schools, which I personally don't really think should happen at all because I think it's unsafe. But when you do, you need to bring these structures up to code. Right. And that's been a concern and something that we've been focusing on. Other things locally, such as education is always an issue in the state legislature, but in particular with Common Core, it's been a particular focus, and I've been working with our teachers and with our parents to try to get amendments to those programs so that really the curriculum is developed on the ground organically with the teachers and the principals and those that are not sort of a top-down approach. I'm particularly proud of eliminating what's known as the GEA, the Gap Elimination Adjustment, which was really cuts that were put in during the Patterson administration, which resulted specifically, Clarkstown, I think, was the perfect example of how this program has hurt our residents over the years, these cuts. And because we restored that this year, Clarkstown had a 10% increase in their state aid. Really unprecedented, $2.7 million goes a long way. I've been working with our school board presidents, and I know we have a new superintendent there who just getting to know, and hopefully we're moving that district in forward. But those are a couple of the local issues, and then of course you need to focus on statewide issues and ethics and heroin and some of the crises we've seen. So recently in the last month we had a comprehensive heroin proposal which limited for acute care how much of these opioids get prescribed. We worked with the doctors to make sure that it doesn't affect those with chronic pain. But when you go in for a minor sort of foot surgery or thing like that, you get a 30-day supply of oxycodone, goes in the medicine cabinet, it's available there for kids, and we have to, that's where this sort of epidemic is starting. In addition, providing insurance coverage. Allowing people to check into facilities and be guaranteed a certain amount of coverage before they're kicked out so that we can get these people into treatment. And I do think we've made strides in ethics. I continue to fight that battle and continue to push for additional. It's a constant battle. Just like it bothers people when they pick up the newspaper and read about public corruption, it bothers me to such an extent because I want to be proud of where I serve and proud of the job I do. And a major step was pension forfeiture for corrupt elected officials that abuse their office, making sure that taxpayers aren't paying for their pensions. So we did pass what will be a constitutional amendment. Has to pass 2 separately elected legislatures. So there'll be an election this year. So it was a deadline to absolutely get it done this year. And we got that bill done and pass it again next year and hopefully be on the ballot in November for voters to vote on.
Well, that's great. In the moment or two that we have left, maybe we could talk just a little bit about the East Ramapo School District. I know that you've taken some leadership role in that. I've been at a lot of meetings and rallies with you up in Albany last year and earlier this year, and maybe you could give an update on that as well.
Sure, I appreciate your efforts and all residents throughout Clarkstown, even though we have portions of Clarkstown, East Ramapo, but even those areas that aren't East Ramapo recognize the crisis that were there, and I think people really stepped up. And Not to go all the way back, but we had our oversight bill last year, which we really felt was the way to go. We passed it in the Assembly. Unfortunately, it couldn't get through the Senate. So this year, we started with that bill. But really, as it became clear that the Senate wasn't going to pass it again, we had to take a realistic look and say, what are we doing here? We have kids in these classrooms, and can we get something done here? Can we achieve some of our objectives, which is really both restoration of programs and significant oversight over a board that we feel like has not been acting in the best interests of children. So we did sit down with the public school advocates and worked out a mechanism. So the old mechanism that we pushed and believed in was sort of monitors that were on the ground that had sort of real-time veto authority. The bill never said veto, but that was the word. That was the controversial word that got talked about. Well, the new concept that we were able to work out with the public school advocates and negotiate and get done is really an oversight mechanism with the commissioner. So the board will have to submit their budget to the commissioner, who will have binding authority over the budget. They'll also have to submit other things that we had seen being problems in the district, such as sale of public assets, any additional cuts to public programs, and also capital contracts over $100,000, because we really need a bond in that school as we see roofs leaking, and I go in and read in these schools and have to walk past buckets collecting water. So that's the new sort of oversight mechanism, as well as a $3 million allocation to restore what looks to be some art and music and maybe some additional kindergarten slots. They're meeting about it right now, and they'll have a public hearing for the public really to have an ability to weigh in on it. So is it everything we wanted from last year? No. Is it much better than going home with nothing? Yes, I think that's what I'm elected to do, is not just to push, exactly what I say, but to understand and to try to morph policy into something that actually gets done. People don't want to just hear my glossy mailers of what I think. They want to hear about what actually gets done. So, for these kids in this classroom, having that oversight, having those restored programs, I think is far better than going home with nothing. And we'll continue to the oversight process as we get into a new session next year.
Well, Assemblyman Zebrowski, I want to thank you again. You covered a lot of ground. We'll have you on again in the future. Okay. You really are working hard for the people of Clarkstown, for your district, the 96th district, which includes Haverstraw and a portion of Ramapo as well. And I want to thank you for all of your efforts on behalf of all of our residents within the town and within that district. And thank you for being such a great guest today.
Thanks for having me today, and thanks for working with me all these years.
Great, thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining me. I want to thank our guests, again, David Kirschtel, JCC of Rockland, Lis Gessel, and thank her for her service in the Iraqi War, and New York State Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski. Tune in next time for the next edition of Hometown Happenings.